Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage. In this video, we're going to start the restoration series on the newest member to my pinball collection, the very iconic Williams PinBot from 1986. Now, I have owned one of these machines before. About 10 years ago, I had another PinBot, and so I'm glad to now have one again that we can restore on this channel. So, let's get started. So here is our Williams PinBot from 1986. You can see it's in relatively good condition. The play field is very nice still. I don't really see any major wear on it. The only big thing that I saw with it is that the Mylar is starting to bubble in the spots where the light lenses are. So you can see that around like the planets here and by this grid of lights. But that's to be expected with a machine this old. Now this machine does work, it does play fine, but it is definitely going to need a lot of work. The previous owner did upgrade it to LEDs, as you can see. I think I'm going to change some of the colors out, but you can see it's been upgraded to LEDs. The previous owner also said that he replaced the rubbers on it, although it was probably a very long time ago, because as you can see, those rubbers now are quite dirty. So I'm going to put a brand new rubber kit on this thing, so this machine will have all nice new rubbers again. The plastics on this machine are in very nice shape for the most part. This is the only one with major damage that I saw. You can see it's been glued back together, so I'll have to find a replacement for that one. The rest of them are very nice as far as I can tell. No major scratches or cracks. You can see they still look quite nice. Although I did see inside this visor, if you're unfamiliar with PinBot, this visor will open and these targets will move underneath the play field to reveal two captive ball holes back here. Under here, there's a piece of plastic here, and you can see on the edge screw holes that it is broken. Those screws are no longer holding it in place, so I'm going to have to replace the plastic that is underneath the visor. So no big deal for that. Now, what is a bigger deal is that all of the coils for the captive holes, there's one of them right there, when they eject the ball, they have a really hard time going back down. So obviously I'm gonna have to take apart the coil under here, the two under here, and the outhole coil has the same problem. When it kicks the ball, it has a real hard time going back into its resting position. So I'm gonna have to take apart those coils and clean them out because that obviously is not ideal. The drop targets also have issues. I can hit them really hard and they have a very hard time going down, and you can see that the stickers on them are quite dirty and faded. So those are two problems that I'm going to address with that. And PinBot also has a topper, like on my Bally Strange Science that I just did a restoration on. Although it's not neon, it's got 8 flashers behind it. And as far as I can tell, that is the original topper. It hasn't cracked or anything, so that is nice to see that in that good of a condition still. And one other small thing that I noticed as well is the little wire that's supposed to be inside this metal bracket here to prevent the ball from going back into the vortex. That's missing, but that'll be very easy to replace. They're like $3 on Marco Specialties, so that'll be real easy to just pop back in. And this machine did have a flipper issue, but it seems to have fixed itself. The left flipper was initially very weak, like it wouldn't have enough strength to hit the ball up to the sun here. But it seems to have fixed itself. I think there's a dirty switch on the flipper mechanism, so I'll go ahead and clean the switches on the flippers. I've noticed some other switches that are kind of finicky sometimes too, like the ramp switch up here sometimes won't register, so this thing obviously needs its switches cleaned. That's a very simple thing to do. So before we take a look inside the back box and underneath the play field, I'm going to go ahead and do a brief gameplay session just so I can show you how it plays right now. And this will be a great time to demonstrate one of the other issues that it has. Certain sound effects and all of the speech in this machine is very loud and distorted compared to like the game music. So I'm going to go ahead and start the game, and you'll hear some speech, and you should be able to tell that it's pretty distorted.
Last circuit.
but that speech was distorted, and if you listen to this music here, it sounds perfectly fine. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the volume up a little bit because you'll probably hear the distortion a lot better if I do. And one of the sound effects that's really bad with the distortion is when you shoot up this ramp, it'll make some explosion sounds, and those are very distorted. So also listen for that. So as you can see, this machine does play pretty well as it is, but there was a problem that happened during that gameplay. Did you catch it? When I hit all 3 of the drop targets, they didn't reset right away. So one of the drop targets in this thing must have a dirty contact because the machine didn't know that all 3 of them were down, because what it should do when you knock all 3 of them down is advance the planet that's lit right there. And it didn't do that. And I've noticed that it will do that sometimes, so we'll have to fix the drop targets there as well. And as you can see, some of the lights are also not working. There's 3 of them in the 5x5 grid there that are not working. There's 1 up in the back glass that's not working, so we got to fix some of that too. I suppose I should show you the condition of the cabinet. You can see it's pretty worn in some places, like on the coin door there. It's definitely had some use. There was a sticker on it at some point right here, but the front of the cabinet is actually in really good shape. The legs, not so much. You can see they've definitely seen better days, so I'm going to be replacing the legs and the leg levelers on this machine. The side art's not too bad. A little bit of wear, but it's nothing crazy. And on the back side of the cabinet as well. Looks to be pretty good. And the other side is a similar story, but there's a sticker here. And at first I thought this was just some sticker that the previous owner put on, but on the Internet Pinball database, it has a picture of this sticker, and it is a PinBot promotional decal. So that's an official Williams sticker that someone put on the side of this machine. And I can tell, based on the wear here, that there was another sticker there. And on the Internet Pinball database, it showed a red sticker and a blue sticker. And so the one here is the red sticker. So the blue sticker's gone, but the red one is still there. So that is interesting to see. But as you can see, the side art on this side is pretty nice as well. The back box on this side is a little bit more worn, but it is not too bad. Reasonable condition for a machine this old. So let's go ahead and take a look at our back box and see what is going on with that. I've already went ahead and removed the back glass. You can see the previous owner has upgraded this machine to LED displays. These are pin score displays, and I'm not the biggest fan of LED displays, even though they last forever. That's the great thing about them, is just because when they're off, the segments are still really bright, so you can still see them really clearly when the machine is off. That's the one thing I don't like about these. But what's good about LED displays is that they don't take high voltage to run like the originals do. They only run on like 5 volts. So these will last forever. They will virtually never fail. You can also see we have LEDs throughout the whole back box, including the flashers. And that's a problem because I'm going to go ahead and turn the machine back on. You can see the flashers here are on, and they're not supposed to be on. The reason they're on is because the LEDs are ghosting, and those are way too bright. So for this machine, I'm going to put incandescent bulb flashers back in so we don't have that problem. And PinBot is one of those machines that I think looks better with that, so that's what I'm going to do. And if you own a PinBot, you can see the previous owner has marked these 2 flashers as being 89 flashers, and the same with this one. There originally would have been some stickers back here that would show that. But these 2 flashers are 1251 flashers. Do not put 89s in here. They will burn out immediately. So these 2 flashers here, they have to be 1251s, so keep that in mind. So now I'm going to go ahead and open this up, and you're going to see some problems right away as I go ahead and open this up. So here's the inside of the back box, and you can see the first thing I need to address is these 2 resistor boards. The adhesive that holds them onto the back has broken off, so they are no longer held in place. The clips are still clipped into the boards, it's just the adhesive on the back of those clips has broken off. So I'll need to glue those back into place. And as you can see, this machine has been upgraded to a Rotten Dog Amusements board. So this is not running its original board, but it still functions exactly like the original. This is an older Rotten Dog board. It is a MPU 011C. It's originally designed for a System 11C machine, and this is a System 11A machine. And it's this little daughter board that allows the backward compatibility. You can see down there it says Williams System 11A and 11B MPU add-on to the 11C board. So without this little daughter board, it's not able to work in a System 11A machine like this. And that's because on System 11C, they had moved the sound circuitry all to the soundboard, and on the earlier System 11s, some of it was still on the MPU board, and so that is the circuitry that we have on this daughter board. So that's why for that board, you need that little daughter board for it to work right. So the main board has been replaced, so ideally there shouldn't be any faults on it. The power supply is original. The soundboard is original. And this little board down here is also original because they each have a matching serial number, which matches the serial number of the game itself. So those have never been changed. And here we have a new pin score display driver board for those LED displays. And you can't mix original and LED displays with this display driver board just due to how it's made. There's another little resistor board there, and the back board itself looks to be in good shape. Oh, this is a good one. I saw this back here, and that is something I'm going to have to fix because I don't like this. This relay board has been replaced, which is fine. This relay controls the back box general illumination, but the way they wired it, they soldered the wires directly to the back of the board, and you can see they even have some exposed wire right there, and they didn't connect it to the connector pins on the board. And here's my theory as to why that was wired that way. The original board probably had its connector burn up, because that is something that can happen with these type of connectors. When they get a certain amount of heat going through them for a long time, they can start to discolor and burn up and not work anymore. And so that's probably what happened here. So they cut the wires off of the connector and they soldered it straight to the back of that thing, because this relay board probably didn't come with a new connector or crimps to put in it. So The previous owner probably decided, well, that's the easiest way to go, just solder them straight to the back. And it does work, but I don't like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and order a new connector and some crimps so that I can desolder the wires from there and put it into a connector like it's supposed to be. It's also not even in correctly. I can see some of the clips on the bottom. They're not even holding that in, so I'm gonna have to adjust those as well. But those are the only problems that I noticed back here. The rest of the connectors and the boards seem to be in very good condition. But what I did notice is that all of the ROMs in this machine have been upgraded to new ones. You can see on the soundboard there, you can see the ROM chip says Matt's Basement Arcade. So that is where the previous owner got the upgrade ROMs. You can see the daughter board there has 2 new ROMs there. And then underneath it, you can kind of see there's another one there as well. And then this chip here, that's an NVRAM chip. So this machine no longer needs a battery to save high scores in game settings. Now that's a change that I like. But what I thought was amazing, I went ahead and looked inside this machine and there's actually quite a bit of stuff inside it. The original ROM chips were still in it. So here's all the stuff I found in the machine. You can see quite a bit. In this binder here, we have some original documentation. We have the original manual, and as far as I can tell, it is complete. It's got all of the schematics and diagrams in it as well, so that is nice to have an original copy of that. We have an original PinBot gameplay and scoring features sheet that kind of tells you the basics on how to play the game, so that is cool to see. We also have the instructions for that Rotten Dog board that is in the machine. And then on this side, we have some high score labels. We have the different labels for the price signs. So those are nice to still see. And we have the original registration card for the game as well. And we also have this little advertisement for the StarTech Journal magazine. That probably came with the machine when it was new, so that's cool to see. And we have some replay value and extra ball additional signs as well. We also have what's left over of a PinBot rubber kit from Marco's Specialties. You can see it was ordered back in 2018. And if these rubbers are good, I'm going to use them. I'm probably still going to buy a new kit just so I have new ones. But if these are still soft, if they're still clean, not cracking, I will use what's left in here. We have a little chip puller here. I already have one of these, but it's nice to have another one. And this is a PinBot plastic shield set. Apparently you can buy these clear plastics and then put stickers on them. I'm not gonna go that route when I replace plastics, so I don't really need these, but it is nice to see that the previous owner was keeping up with maintenance on their machine. We have a little pinball holder with a pinball in it. I took it out and looked at it and it was kind of rusty, so it's not really usable. And we just have a bunch of other little oddities like LEDs, fuses, some rubbers, some nuts, more LEDs and flashers in there, and just some stuff I found inside the machine. Little pinball post, that's nice to have. But this I was not expecting to see. This is the original ROM set, minus this chip, for the PinBot. So those are the original Williams chips. I don't know why they got pulled out. Maybe one of them's bad, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and put those back in just so we have the original ROMs, and then the new ones can just be spares in case I need them. So I'll probably put those back in. So that's the back box, and one other thing I'm gonna have to do to this machine is, as it is now, this wood piece here is way too close to where the back glass sits, and so when you put the back glass back in, it rubs right against this and the displays. So this panel is just sitting too close, so I'm gonna have to move it back a little bit. I saw some adjustments that were in it, so I'm gonna have to do that at some point. And as you can see with the back glass back on, those displays are just way too close. It looks kind of odd in person, so that is gonna have to be addressed. That shouldn't be a big deal to do. So let's go ahead now and take a look underneath the playfield. Yeah, I would say that foam needs to be replaced. That's pretty filthy. So now that the glass is off, we can get a better look at the playfield, and you can see it's actually in really good shape. No serious wear, even down by the bumpers, it looks pretty good. It's just the bubbles in the Mylar. That is the big thing with this machine. So yeah, pretty good shape with that playfield. Let's go ahead and take a look underneath. And here's what it looks like inside this machine. You can see the board is in very good condition, but the bottom of the cabinet is very dirty. I found some stuff that was just laying in the bottom of the cabinet, and there's a lot more behind the playfield there. And I just put what I found so far in the coin box, so there's more to pick out back there because of how filthy it is. But in terms of the playfield itself, it looks very nice. I can see the flippers have at least been rebuilt somewhat. I can tell that it has the original frame for the flipper assembly, but the coils have been replaced, and it looks like some of the other parts there have been replaced as well. So rebuilt flippers, that's nice. And it looks like the motor for the visor was replaced April 24th, 1989. I wonder why the original one failed so soon. It only would have been 3 years old. But this motor clearly has lasted since 1989. And I also figured out why the LEDs in this grid weren't working. It's simply a loose connection problem. I took one of them out and tightened up the connections, put it back in, and it came right up. So let me show you what you need to do to fix the connections on these wedge sockets when you have a light that isn't working. It might be hard to tell on camera, but I can tell from underneath that this light here is not working. So let's go ahead and pull it out. You just have to twist it a little bit, and then it comes right out. The LED itself looks just fine, so we'll go ahead and pull it out. And yeah, those connections in that socket are very loose. Let me show you what those look like. So those are the connections that will grip the wires on the LED in order to give it power. You can see they're spaced out quite a bit. So what you need to do is take a screwdriver or something thin and just bend those contacts in so that they're a little closer, and then that will grip the LED a lot better. So you can see now I made those contacts a lot closer. So now when I put the LED back in, it should grip on it nice and tight, and the light should work now. And yep, I can tell that it is working now. So that fixed the problem, and so now all the lights in this grid are working again. But you can see just how dirty the bottom of the cabinet is. It clearly has not been cleaned in a while. And looking back there, there's still some stuff I take out of there. I can see some washers and screws, and there's even a little piece of a flower in there. Wonder how that got in there. So yeah, at some point I'm gonna have to give this thing a full vacuuming and cleaning and make it look a lot better. But here's what the underside of the playfield on the PinBot looks like. It looks to be pretty good. But we are going to have to fix some issues with the coils, because particularly with the kick-out hole coils, like this one back here, you push it down, see how it doesn't really want to come back up? So I'm going to have to take these coils apart and clean them out so that they are nice and free again, like this one here. You can see this one here for the slingshot is nice and free. So all the coils that are like that are going to have to be taken apart and cleaned. But what I want to do first is take care of all of the back box related problems. And then after we're done doing that, we can start fixing up the playfield issues. So the first thing I want to do is put the original ROM set back in, because I'm going to try to fix the audio issue that is making some of the speech and sounds distorted. I don't think the ROMs are the actual problem. I'll get more to that here in a minute. But what I'm going to do is I am going to push the advance button on the coin door, and you can see we have the name of the game, PinBot. It's game number 549, and the ROM set that is in here, the new ROMs, the version is L5. I just wanted to take a look and see what version of the ROMs we had before I went ahead and swapped in the originals, just to see if it was the same version. So now we know, so I'll go ahead and turn the machine off, and we'll put the original ROMs back in. Actually, before we do the ROMs, I'm gonna go ahead and glue those clips for the resistor boards there back into place, just so those aren't hanging, because that kind of bugs me, and it'll be a lot easier to remove the ROMs with those in the right spot. And because it's just the adhesive that has failed, I need to go ahead and remove those clips from the boards so that I can put some glue on them. And it's a good thing Williams made it easy. If I remove this connector and this connector, that will free these two boards. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove them from the machine, and I'll take a look at them real quick, and I'll go ahead and get those clips glued back on. So here are two resistor boards. You can see they're in nice shape. The resistors have gotten a little brown just because they get hot when they run, but I tested them with an ohm meter and they all measure just fine. So those resistors are good. I went ahead and looked at the back of the boards. You can see they're in good shape. And the other one looked exactly the same. Good shape, never been worked on. Now what I really should do here for the best results is remove all of this old padding off of the back of the clips, because the super glue is not really going to stick as well to that. Plus they're not sticky anymore anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and remove all that and remove the padding that's in the machine as well, so that I can have a nice solid surface to glue these to. And I just had a thought, instead of gluing these to the back of the back box, I think I'm going to just Velcro them instead. That way I don't have to wait for any glue to dry and it'll be just as effective. I'm still going to go ahead and remove this padding though, so I have a good surface to put on Velcro. And there we go. Those two resistor boards are now back where they're supposed to be. No more hanging around free in the back box. So that is one problem fixed. Now let's go ahead and remove the replacement ROMs and put the originals back in. So when removing these ROM chips, the best way to do it is to use a chip puller. And as I showed earlier, I found one inside the machine. And this is a perfectly good type of chip puller to use, but you still have to wiggle the chip out when you use that kind of puller, and so there's still a risk of bending the legs when removing the chip. So I'm going to be using this type of chip puller. It's one where you just pull this black part down and it clamps the chip and pulls it straight out. So there's no wiggling necessary. And I'll show you how it works, because once you get that kind of chip puller, there is no going back to a regular one like the other one. So I'm going to remove this chip right here. And so I put it on top of the chip and then push the black part down. It's going to clamp the chip, pulls it straight out. The legs are still straight and it pulled the chip out perfectly. So that is the best way that I've found to remove chips like that from boards. So this is the chip I just pulled out. You can see it comes from Matt's Basement Arcade. It is the PinBot Speech ROM U21. And you can see on that little sticker there, it says licensed Williams and Bally. And you can see the legs are still nice and straight from pulling the chip out. And here's the original U21 chip. This would have come off the original driver board. So we're going to put this back where that other chip just was. And so once you get the chip back in the socket and make sure that none of the legs are bent when you're doing it, you can just go ahead and push it right back in. So there's one of our original sound ROMs back in. So I'm going to do that to the rest of the chips. There is one on the soundboard right here. There's one right below the one we just did. And there are two underneath the little daughter board here. So I'm going to have to remove these two clips to take off this daughter board and get to those chips. So once I get all those replaced, we will go ahead and turn the machine on and see if it still functions. And one thing I'm going to address while I have the daughter board off, you can see the locations of the other two ROM chips there. The Rotten Dog board is missing 4 of its screws. It's only being held up right here and right there on the other side. So there are 4 screws that are missing, but when looking through the parts that were inside the PinBot, there are the 4 screws right there. All right, it is back together now with all of the original ROM chips installed on all of the boards, and the missing screws have been replaced on the Rotten Dog board, so now it is nice and tight in the machine. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see if it functions with its original ROMs. Factory setting. Okay, so it seems like the original ROMs do work. All that's telling me is it reset all of the settings back to the factory default. So let's go ahead and push the advance button. Okay, so these ROMs are an earlier version. You can see now we have version L2. So these original ROMs are definitely earlier versions than the ROMs that were in it. And as I suspected, after swapping out those ROMs, it did not fix the distorted sound and speech issue. But I do have a suspicion as to what the issue is, but I'm gonna have to order some parts in order to fix that problem. So that's something we'll come back to later. But what I want to do now is solve the issue where the back glass is way too close to the backboard, because right now these displays are basically touching the back glass and it rubs really hard when you put the back glass on. So let's go ahead and get that fixed. And so I figured out what the problem actually is. It's not with the backboard itself. The backboard is in the correct position. It's actually the speaker grill down here. And I can show you how I know, because the back glass is supposed to rest against this piece of wood here. And you can see there's a wear mark from where the back glass has slid over the years. And you see how the speaker grill is a little bit farther back. So what I need to do is angle the speaker grill more forward so that the wear mark matches up with the little groove in the grill. So once you open the back box, if you take a look down here at the bottom, you can see there are two screws that screw the speaker grill into the back box wood, and there are two more on the other side as well behind all this wiring. And with those 4 screws removed, you can see the speaker grill pops right out. And you can see now just how dirty the bottom of the back box is. We've got a bunch of filth down here. We have some stickers that have fallen off of where they were supposed to go. So I think now would be a great time to vacuum all this up, because the grill is out and I can take this little trim piece off. There's just 4 screws holding that on, and I can vacuum up under that as well. So we'll do that. You can see we have our speaker grill here. We have the main speaker and a smaller little auxiliary speaker. And these were the mounts that held it into the back box. So I'm gonna go ahead and get all this vacuumed out, and I'll get the speaker grill mounted in a way that is actually correct. Well, that's certainly a night and day difference, isn't it? I went ahead and vacuumed up all that dirt and I gave it a wipe down, so now it looks really good. I removed the trim piece and cleaned up under that as well. So now I'll go ahead and mount this grill back on. So to mount the speaker grill correctly, I'm gonna have to drill some new holes. So what I ended up doing was using the little piece of wood that the back glass slides against, and I put a ruler up against it to draw a little mark so I knew where to align the speaker grill, and that allowed me to make marks inside the back box for the new hole locations. So what I did is I put some tape around my drill bit so I knew how far to drill into the back box. So now we're ready to make some holes. All right, the speaker grill is now screwed back in, and the screws are actually in straight this time since I drilled new holes on both sides. If we take a look at the pencil mark I made, you can see the back side of the grill lines right up with the mark. And it does that on the other side as well. Can't really get a good angle on that, so you'll have to take my word for it. So let's go ahead and put the back glass on and see how it fits in there. Perfect. You can see now when it goes up and down, it's no longer binding. It moves freely and it's not right up against the displays like it was before. So that's fixed. That was an issue I really wanted to solve. All right, let's go ahead now and fix this relay board wiring. So I'll pull the board off of those 2 clips there, and I'll show you what's going on the back side. So instead of building a new connector for this board, the previous owner just soldered the wires directly to the back of the board. So what I'm gonna do is desolder those wires and put a new connector on it. So I went ahead and bought the Big Daddy Williams relay board connection kit. And it comes with the 2 parts of the connector, plus all of the crimp terminals you need to crimp to the wires to stick into the connector. And I've gone ahead and desoldered the board, and I've since learned that this board is actually the wrong part. PinBot used a different style relay board. It had just a few terminals directly on the board, so it never had a connector from the factory, so that's why it was never there. But I think this relay board is meant for later Williams System 11s, but I can wire it up to make it work. So here's what I've been doing so far. I've stripped these wires back so that I could put the crimp terminals on them, and then when I'm done, I just stick them into the connector, and then once you put it in there, it is locked in there unless you use a tool to remove it. So those are all the wires now put into connectors. Although for this one, I'd get a little creative because it had 2 wires going to a single pad on the board. So what I did is I put both of those wires into a little wire splice and then found another little red wire to come out the other side. And so I crimped all that together. And so this red wire is the one that has the crimp terminal on it so that it can connect into this connector here. So let's go ahead and connect them up and see if they work. And so that is what it looks like when it's all connected up. It's now in an actual connector instead of being soldered to the back of the board. So they're easily removable. So let's see if it works. Yep, it works perfectly because that relay is what controls the back box GI. So now that relay board has been installed correctly. But because this isn't the intended relay board that PinBot uses, the 2 clips at the bottom don't line up with the 2 holes in the board. I can get the top 2 in, but I'm gonna have to drill a couple new holes so that I can get the clips in the 2 bottom holes of this board. So I'll go ahead and get that done real quick. All right, so you can see what I've done. I just relocated the bottom 2 clips up a little bit so that they would fit inside the holes of the board. So now it is properly mounted and the wires are now in a connector how they're supposed to be. I also went ahead and put some heat shrink over the couple wires that had some exposed bits here. So that is no longer a disaster waiting to happen. And so with that, the relay board is now set up properly. All right, well, let's go ahead and tackle some under the playfield stuff because I'm still waiting for parts to finish up the back box. So when I was looking down here, I found some more issues that we're gonna have to address. So PinBot is one of the System 11 machines that has these little resistor boards, and what these are for is for controlling the flash bulbs. So how they work is these 2 resistors on the edge, these 330 ohm resistors, they light up the filaments in the light bulbs very dimly, just so that the bulb doesn't have to draw as much current when it flashes. And theoretically, it extends the life of the bulb. I don't know if that's true. And then these 2 resistors here are just part of the circuit. These are 5 ohm resistors. And so how these boards are set up is these 2 resistors, they control 2 flash bulbs, and these 2 resistors control another 2. So one of these boards can control up to 4 flash bulbs. But I've noticed during my play test that not all of the flashers in this machine actually work. Well, that's because the resistors aren't connected. At least this one isn't. I think these 3 are. They feel like they're connected. So those 3 are fine. But if you look at this board down here, totally different story. One of the 330 ohm resistors is missing, and this one is not connected. And that's actually not surprising that one of these is missing, because if you want to put LED flashers in one of these earlier System 11 machines, you have to remove these 330 ohm resistors. Otherwise, when you have LED flash bulbs in, they're always lit dimly, just because that's the purpose of these edge resistors. They're not really meant for LEDs, and so what you have to do is remove these so that the LED flashers will stay off when they're supposed to be off. And I think that's what the previous owner was trying to do, and that kind of explains why a lot of these resistors are either gone or not connected. But PinBot is a game that I think looks better with incandescent flashers, so I'm going to be replacing all of the missing and broken resistors. And I even saw this resistor here, while it's not broken, you can see the actual resistor part, it moves. Well, when I was in the solenoid test, I figured out that this resistor board controls the 4 flashers down here for when the ball hits the pop bumpers. These flashers will flash briefly. It only works if I hold this resistor down. So something internally in this resistor is broken, so I have to replace it. And there's a few other boards where we're having similar issues like this. I think this board here, yeah, both of these resistors, you can see they're not connected anymore, and I don't know why they're broken. And it doesn't even look like someone cut them off. It's almost like the lead to the resistor got so fatigued, because these things run pretty hot, that it just broke off. I mean, is that even possible for something like this? I don't know. But we got plenty of those resistors that we need to replace. There's also another board down here, but I think it's okay. Yeah, that one seems fine. And I checked all the ones in the back box and they are all okay. So it looks like it is just these 3 boards here that need attention. So once I get the parts for that, I will go ahead and replace those resistors. But for now, what I want to do is take care of the stuck coils, because obviously those need to be able to move smoothly in order for the game to function right. So I've shown before, like for this kick out coil, it doesn't really want to come back. You can see it kind of gets stuck. So what I'm going to do is take apart the coil assemblies for the ones that get stuck and just clean out the coil parts, like the plunger and the sleeve, and we'll see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, I might have to replace the coil sleeves. So let's go ahead and take apart a coil and see what we need to do to fix it. So here's an example of what one of those sticking coils looks like. So right now I'm in the solenoid test, and if I push the advance button, it's going to go to the drop target reset coil. You can hear it properly energized the first time, but now it doesn't sound quite right. And if we look inside the machine, you can see what's going on. The coil just isn't coming back down. You can see it's trying to reset, but the little assembly doesn't come back down. So I need to clean the inside of that out so that it will come down all the way after it's done energizing. And this is actually a good place to start, because then I can take apart the drop target assembly and fix its issues while I am addressing the coil. So this is where we'll start. And this drop target assembly is built a lot better than the earlier Williams drop target assemblies. Instead of having the little PCB boards on the back, the only switches that are involved here are these 3 micro switches here that get pressed when the drop targets go down. And so that's how the game knows they're down. So I think this is a lot simpler of an assembly to work with. It looks like there's just 8 screws to remove. There's 4 here. Oh, that one was loose. Something was loose. That might have just been the target. Looks like 4 screws to remove this plate. And then I see we have springs. I imagine that they are going from here to the drop targets like on the earlier ones. And then there are 4 more screws up on the top there. And then that'll allow me to take these 2 brackets off. And then I should be able to easily take the drop targets down and then out. And then I can clean them up and clean up the rest of the assembly. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to try just removing the bottom 4 screws. I might be able to get away with that. Let's see. Because I think there's enough room to remove the drop targets just by removing the lower bracket, because it's just these 2 back brackets that hold them in without them falling out. There we go. Bracket is off. And so now the metal piece on this side is loose that has one end of the springs and that holds in the coil sleeve. So what I'm going to do is put one of the drop targets down, and let's see if I can remove it. Yeah, I can. Okay, cool. So it's just the spring. And so since the spring is attached to the metal piece that I just unscrewed, I should be able to just slide it out. And there we go. There's one of our drop targets. So I don't need to remove that top bracket. That's actually pretty nice. And so the other 2 drop targets are going to come out the exact same way. There's number 2. And there is number 3. So now I can just go ahead and slide this metal piece down. And then I should be able to also slide the coil down. Yes, okay, perfect. And then I can pull the coil out. There we go. And then I can pull off the drop target pieces. And there we go. They just come right out. So I'll go ahead and clean all these up, clean out the coil sleeve, and we'll see if that coil works better. So here's all the stuff I pulled out. You can see the drop targets are quite dirty. And same goes for all the other pieces that are here. And one thing you can do to test if the coil sleeve is still okay is you can put it back in the plunger and just move it like this. And if it moves nice and free, you know that the coil sleeve is still good. So you can see it's still moving really nicely. So this coil sleeve is fine. It's very dirty though, so I'm going to be cleaning it as best as I can. And I did go ahead and buy some new decals for the drop targets. But looking at the original ones, it doesn't look like they're faded. I think they just might be dirty. So I might be able to just clean those up and leave them on. But if not, then I will put the new decals on the targets. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up and we'll see what it looks like afterwards. Well, there's the difference between dirty drop targets and a clean one. You can see the decal is in really nice condition still. So I'm just gonna leave these on. I'll wait until these wear down and then I'll put the new ones on because that is still in really nice shape. And there are all the parts all cleaned up. It may not look too terribly different on camera, but there's a lot of grease and dirt that came off on my cleaning wipe. So let's go ahead and put these back into the assembly and we'll see if it works. Well, one thing's for sure, those drop targets look a lot better now that they've been cleaned up. So I'm in the solenoid test and I'm at the solenoid right before the drop target reset coil. So I'm gonna go ahead and push the advance button and we'll see if it works now. And that is a yes, it's all good. So that is how it's supposed to act like. I heard a little bit of squeaking still, so I can probably just put a little bit of dielectric grease on the metal to metal points in that part that goes up and down, and then that squeak should go away. So you can hear that after I put the grease on the metal parts that the squeak is now completely gone. I just put a little bit of dielectric grease on these little metal parts right here that this part slides against, and so now the squeak is completely gone. And I also went ahead and put a little bit of contact cleaner inside the 3 micro switches because they're having a little bit of trouble before. But now we're in the solenoid test and I push one of the switches down. It gets detected the moment it clicks. So those 3 switches are now working perfectly fine. And so that is the entire drop target assembly taken care of. So now I'm gonna go through and take care of the rest of the coils and I'll get them all freed up. All right, well, I've done some looking around through this machine and I figured out what the problem of the sticky coils is. It was not the coil or the coil plunger or the coil sleeve, but it was these joints here for every coil with this style of kicker assembly. So what I did is I put a little bit of lubricant inside these little joints here, and that made all of those coils nice and free. And this was the coil that I was showing you was really sticky before. Now if I go ahead and energize it, it is absolutely perfect. So I went ahead and I did that to all of the coils with this style kicker assembly because those were the ones that were sticky, and that fixed every single one of them. So that was kind of a nice discovery. Now I don't have to take all of these coils apart to clean them out. I might still do that because this machine's pretty dirty, but I'm glad the problem with the coils wasn't as big of a problem as I thought. So let's go ahead now and move to these resistor boards and see if we can get all these flashers working. So I've gone ahead and put this game into its solenoid test and I've stopped it on a point where it's flashing a couple of flash bulbs because I want to show you what happens when you put LED flashers in a System 11 machine without doing that resistor board modification. As you can see, these 4 flashers under here are just dimly on, and that's because those 330 ohm resistors are still installed. But you can see the 2 flashers that are flashing right now, they don't stay on when the machine isn't purposely trying to flash them. And that is because it's also flashing 2 flashers up in the topper, and all the flashers up there are still incandescent bulbs. But I figured out that if you have at least 1 incandescent bulb flasher in the same circuit that you have an LED flasher in, the LED flashers will actually go off when they're supposed to be off. So now I'm going to show you some of the problems I figured out with those LED flashers, and I'll show you how you can pinpoint issues on those resistor boards. So right now I have the game flashing the 2 edgemost flashers for the topper, and those are controlled by a resistor board in the back box. But the game right now should also be flashing these 2 flashers here. And as you can see, they're just stuck in the dimly lit mode. So that shows you that the circuit to dimly light the filaments of the flashers is working because these are lit, but the part that actually flashes them is not working. And that's what we saw on the resistor board that controls these flashers, because the one that does those 2 was the one that had both of those middle resistors completely cut off. And now I have the game flashing the energy flashers. Those are the flashers in that big light lens right there next to the pop bumpers. Those are the ones that only work when I hold that 1 resistor down. So after I replace that resistor, those should work. And after I replaced the resistors on those boards, this is what those LED flashers down here should look like. Should look like these two. You can see how they're flashing. The game is making them flash. So that's what we should see with these two once I go ahead and fix those boards. And there are also several flashers inside the visor that aren't working. I've already replaced a few of them, but there's a total of 6 flashers back here and only one was working. And this one that's flashing now was not working before because it was burned out. And you know why it was burned out? Because all of the flashers back here are supposed to be 1251s, and they had 89 flashers back there. So of course they're burned out. They burn out in like 5 seconds. And that is not the only flasher that's supposed to be flashing, so there's still some more of them that I have to replace. And I believe that those are all the flasher issues this machine still has. So let's first go ahead and take care of those resistor boards. So for this board, we just need to replace the 2 middle resistors here, and these are both 5 ohm, 10%, 10 watt resistors. And the ones I bought for it are 5 ohm, 5%, 10 watt resistors. So they're a little bit better than what this game came with originally. All right, I got those soldered in, so now this board should work completely fine. And it's worth noting that these resistors can run really hot, and Williams thought of that because on the back side of the board you can see there are holes underneath each of the resistors so that there's more ventilation once the resistor is installed. But what I did when I put in those 2 resistors is I left a little bit of a gap like Williams did so they're not contacting the board. And that's just so I can get even more ventilation under those resistors and the board won't burn up. So let me show you what I'm gonna do to these other boards over here. So this board is the one that controls the 4 energy flashers by the pop bumpers. And I figured out that both of these resistors are actually broken. I have to hold both of them down to make those 4 flashers work. And it's not a loose connection on the board. There's some internal connection in the resistor that's actually broken. I can feel it. So this board is going to need all new resistors. And then the board directly above that, right there, that one needs its 330 ohm resistor replaced. You can see it's broken on one side. All the rest of these seem to be fine. So I'm just going to put a new 330 ohm right there, and then all the boards in this thing should be good to go. And there we go. That is one resistor replaced here, and all of the resistors on that board replaced. So let's go ahead and turn on the machine and see if all our flashers are working. So the 2 lower flashers are working now, but now since I connected the circuit between those 2 top flashers and those, because I put those resistors in circuit, now they're off when they're supposed to be off. I'm going to be changing those out to incandescents because I think those would look better under these domes. So those are working now. And our energy flashers are working. So that is all the flashers in this machine now working. I still have to replace the burned out ones inside the visor, but those will be easier to access when we do the playfield restoration. I'll be taking the playfield all apart, and so I will replace those then. So we've been going pretty quickly through this machine, haven't we? Because there is only one more major problem left to solve, and that is the sound distortion on the soundboard. And as you've seen earlier, this machine has been upgraded to a Rotten Dog System 11A MPU board. Well, I've been doing some research and I figured out that Williams has a discrepancy between the parts list in the manual and the schematic, and Rotten Dog didn't see that, and so they didn't engineer the board quite right. So let me show you what I found. So if we look at the PinBot manual on page 40, it shows all of the parts for the background, speech, and soundboard, and this is part D11297. And if we take a look down here, these resistors are 16 through 19, 30, 32, 35, and 38. Those are all supposed to be 10K resistors according to this list. But if we go to page 57, it says Alphanumeric Master Display Board Schematic, but that's just the wrong title. That's actually earlier in the manual. This is one of the soundboard schematics, and if we take a look right here, R32 is listed as a 2.2K resistor, not a 10K. But the rest of these, 33, 34, 35, and 30, are 10K. So the discrepancy is in the schematic. It says R32 is a 2.2K, but in the parts list, it says it's a 10K. Now, what's on the board is a 2.2K. And so what's going on is Rotten Dog engineered their board around a 10K resistor. And so what's going on is since we have a 2.2K in there, it's letting more sound through than what it should be doing. So what we need to do is actually modify the soundboard and replace that 2.2K resistor with a 10K. So let's go ahead and remove the soundboard and do that. All right, so here's our soundboard, and as you can see, it is in very nice condition. There's a lot of room up here where some unpopulated components are, but I guess that's all they needed to make the soundboard work in the PinBot. And if we take a look at the back, you can see this board has been worked on before. You can see the solder flux residue marks. Well, those marks are on all of the capacitors, so the previous owner of this game has recapped the soundboard, so that is really nice to see. I can also tell that the main 4 connectors here, 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 and here have been reflowed, so that is also nice. Those are known to have their solder joints cracked, so that's good that those are reflowed. So what we need to do is replace resistor R32, which is right here, with a 10K ohm resistor. Right now it's got a 2.2K in it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that swap. And there we are, simple enough. So let's go ahead and put this board back in the machine and we'll see if the sound sounds normal now. All right, the soundboard has been reinstalled. So what I'm gonna do for my first test is I'm gonna go into the sound test because some of the sounds on this game are generated right off of the MPU board, but others are generated off the soundboard. So I'm gonna see if the audio levels are in sync. So it still sounds a little bit loud, so what I'm going to do is there's a potentiometer on the soundboard. It's right here. And I'm going to turn it until the sounds coming out of this board are the same level as the sounds coming from the MPU board. Well, on second thought, I think I might revert it back to how it was because some of the other sound effects are now a lot quieter than the others, and I didn't have that problem before, so I think I'm just going to revert it back and say, it's okay, it's good enough. I just wanted to see if that would change anything, and it does. It makes the visor and the explosion sound effects a lot better, but some of the other ones are just too quiet, so I'm going to put the 2.2K back in. Well, unfortunately, that last bit with the soundboard didn't work out, but we were able to fix all of the other major issues with this machine, so it is now 100% working. So that's going to be the end of part 1. In part 2, we'll go about giving this game a cleanup, we'll do the playfield restoration, and we'll take the rest of the boards out of the back box just so we can give them a brief inspection. So look forward to that, and I will see you in my next video.